I'm beginning to understand that we need to stop trying to make sure. And that's not in the sense that we shouldn't be certain about the decisions that we make, and that we shouldn't try to be certain in the decisions that we make and be confident in them. But I mean in the sense that I think we constantly try to make sure that the decision that we make is the best one. That we constantly try to analyze each situation that we find ourselves in to make sure that whatever step we take is the right step. And I think that to an extent it can be helpful. But then we ultimately end up falling into analysis paralysis, where we just focus so much on trying to look at every option, look at every different choice, that we then prevent ourselves from making a choice. I think it's important that we recognize that analysis paralysis is something that exists, and that through God we already are free. That we don't necessarily need to stress or worry about the path that we take, about the direction that we're going to go in, and that we've already been freed from that burden. I think it's about recognizing that you don't need to make sure in the sense that, if there's a 99.99% chance of something happening, you don't then need to stress about the 0.01% chance of it not happening. You don't need to stress about different circumstances or different possibilities that you imagine, different situations that you can imagine that in theory could happen but won't happen. And I think that, it's a bit nuanced as just a topic. Because, like I said, I think that to an extent it can be helpful to look at the options that you have in front of you. But then it's when you look too deeply into it. It's when you try to control your circumstances so much that you don't allow God to control them for you. It's when you try to make sure that every decision that you make is right according to you and not necessarily according to God. It's about almost trying to take control of everything that happens to you. But I think that the only way that you can be free, the only way that you can almost flow in your own life is if you let go of that control. Not in that you don't have the ability to influence your circumstances, but in that you don't have the ability to control them. And in that you don't have the stress, you don't need the stress of trying to control your own circumstances. It's about recognizing that you don't need to ponder, you don't need to think about, you don't need to constantly worry about all the different things that could happen. You don't need to make sure that the decision that you make is right. You could be confident in your decision. I think that's very important, that you pick the decision that you think is right. But then it's not about making a decision, then constantly looking back at it. Oh, what if I did this? What if I did that? Because you couldn't have known what the best decision was. So I think it's about recognizing that we almost need to let go of control, in a sense. We need to let go of trying to control every circumstance that we find ourselves in. Because I think that in trying to control circumstance, it's almost an indication that you don't have control of that circumstance. In trying to control a certain circumstance, it's almost an indication that something that you don't want to happen will happen. So I think it's about having faith that everything will happen the way it's supposed to. Everything will happen for your own good, ultimately. And in taking up that mindset and taking that in your own spirit, then you then lose that worry, you lose the anxiety of the different circumstances that you find yourself in, the different choices that you have to make. Because, do your research, look into it, think about things, but then it's about recognizing when thinking becomes too much. When you've already looked at the different sides of, or different positives and negatives of a certain choice, but then you're still just going over them over and over again. I think that once you get to that point, or once you get to the point that you're looking at the very, very, very small details, then you then stop becoming, or you stop trying to make an informed decision, and you prevent yourself from making a decision at all. You try to do so much research into something that you prevent yourself from ever starting. You try to win the race so badly that you never pass the start line. So I think part of it is just allowing yourself, it's giving yourself the freedom to make mistakes in some certain situations. And part of that making mistakes is letting go of control, as if I always need to make the right decision. Because it's important that you try to make the right decision, and it's important that you substantiate the effort into making a right decision. But it's not about trying to control every decision that you make so closely that you never make a mistake. Because if you never make a mistake, then how will you ever grow? I have a Bible verse that goes to the topic of this video pretty well. It's taken from Philippians 4, verse 6 to 7. And it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." So I think a big part of it is about having the faith in God that everything will happen the way it's supposed to. And I know that in the moment, that can be a bit worrying at times. It could be a bit scary at times. Letting go of the control that you so closely once had, or that you thought you had. But it's about recognizing that you don't really control anything. So why give yourself the anxiety of trying to control? You can't add a single hair to your own head. So then why do you believe that you have the ability to control everything that happens to you? That everything that will happen to you is a result of what you do right now. I think that we can influence our circumstances, but we can't control them. And it's not up to us to control them. It's up to God to control them. So, this is just something I was thinking about today. Yeah. Thank you for watching. I hope you took something from this video. Have a great day.